Hello. Welcome back to the Godfoe Universe podcast. This is Dan and Josh, co-creators of the Godfoe Universe. We have our first graphic novel, Apollyon 20XX, Volume 1, coming out spring of this year. Josh, can you give us a little bit of an update on that?
It is fully penciled, fully written.
Fully frontal.
I I am about a chapter and a half out of six are finished with the inking and lettering, so it's moving right along. It's exciting, dude.
Now, when you say inking, it's black and white, so that means coloring.
Yeah,
Yes.
all the shading and all that stuff. Yeah, because it's black and white like a manga, so it's definitely moving right along at a good pace.
Cool.
I'd like to be working on it more. Just been like a crazy season.
You said that like you were passive aggressively addressing whoever could help you not work. I'd like to be working.
I'd like to be unemployed.
Anyway, today we got with us Hans, a son of Mercury, who is
Hi.
who is probably all around best person on the internet ever.
Not all that.
who I'm going to get to have his own show on here, talking about whatever he wants. Because, I mean, look at him.
Woo!
Stunning and brave.
Well, we had another topic planned, but today we're going to talk about the Warhammer.
Warhammer.
So, it's gotten a lot of attention recently. To me, it's really surprising how much Warhammer has grown. Because, like, when we were in high school, which was, 15 years ago? 10, 15 years
20,
ago?
buddy. 20.
Yeah, I was about to say longer.
20. It's like Hans was the only person I knew that played Warhammer. I learned about it from him.
That's because nobody else could afford to play it in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody would play it in Lake City High School for sure. Oh, sorry, in the high school we were in. Yeah.
Hans loves to dox himself. I'll bleep that one out. I'm gonna wave here so I see myself in the
dude,
process.
because like Hans welcomes all challengers. He's like, come find me. Hans, dude, for those of you that are listening to the audio only, Hans is descendant of many Vikings. He's one of those men that would be on the front of a ship with an axe in his hand, like in another century.
He was in the Navy.
I am wearing an Adidas track jacket, so I guess that makes me somewhat Viking Europeanish.
yeah, that's what people associate with it.
Right.
That's what people associate with it.
Well, present day anyway. Yeah.
You need a gold chain.
No, but no, I don't care, man. All my stuff's public. I mean, I'll do a little bit better.
Especially my body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But no. So when I was in high school, my brother-in-law got me into it, and he had been playing for maybe a few years before me. I mean, it's been around for a while. It's not new.
Oh, yeah.
It's been around a long time, and anyway, I started playing fantasy version. They have like a fantasy and a 40,000. 40K is what they call it. 40,000 meaning the Millennium 40,000. It's dating it. And so that's obviously science fiction, and in your fantasies, you're,
so like
knights and wizards and all that stuff. And
like
so I
initially it was just the fantasy. Like it started with Warhammer, and it was like a second, like step brother of like Dungeons and Dragons and the RPG kind of thing.
Right.
But it took it that step further with all the miniatures and people making terrain and stuff, and then the 40K stuff I think came later. The 40K stuff is what I'm more interested in. But
I've dabbled in both. I started off playing fantasy, and fantasy on the tabletop kind of died off. Probably of the last 10 to 15 years. There's been like no one really plays fantasy anymore. If you're going to go tabletop, you go 40K. But lately, especially like with the resurgence of The Witcher on Netflix and Harry Potter.
Harry Potty.
full disclosure, to marginalize myself against your fans, I hate Harry Potter. So
that's okay. That's okay. We have no fans.
Therefore, I call
Neither
him
does J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, I call him Harry Potter, but yeah,
Harry Potter.
Yeah, but
Well,
or Larry Otter, either one of the two. But no, so I mean, but with the resurgence of that kind of stuff and the magic, and all this, people are getting back into that and original streaming shows. Fantasy's come back to the tabletop again. They're I don't know if they've done it last year, if they're doing it this year or next year. I don't know for sure. I'm not that plugged in on that side, but they are going to relaunch the fantasy tabletop and give it another go. I'm pretty sure.
Well, and I would say, like, in the past few years, not just with Warhammer, but across the board, I thank the pandemic for this, because people were stuck at home. Board games have had this huge resurgence. Like, half of the Kickstarters you see are board games, and like the tabletop fantasy tactical type games have really been making a comeback for a few years. Like, there was Gloomhaven was a really big hit. They've done several tabletop versions of like Game of Thrones, and it has a lot of expansions. I know that there is they've made the jump from like the Dark Souls games have made the jump to tabletop. Star Wars has done a bunch of tabletop games with miniatures and stuff, and so like it's one of those things that has become a pretty thriving hobby now. Like almost any major city throbbing. But yeah, most major like cities of any size have like a game store now. Like even Conway has a game store now. Like there's just about
I'm doing this because
Con.
you touched yourself again.
I don't live there, so I don't care if people go there. But like there's
hell.
Exactly. There's certain people that can go there.
I don't live there.
Certain people can go there. But no, it's made such a resurgence, and see, like Dan knows, like I'm obsessed with a series called Catan, and I've got like 12 or 13 versions of it in my closet back there. So like the gaming, the people sitting together at a table gaming has gotten really popular again, because I really do think it's because of the pandemic.
I like
Dungeons and Dragons
about I really like the idea of people getting less online and starting like to form their own communities in person. And I know not everybody can do that, but I mean that's the future, if we're gonna have a future of anything, but particularly nerd related, because the internet is, and
horrible.
Nerd culture is being corporatized, like literally corporatized, and they're using the internet to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you guys remember growing up, like, and this is something that, I remember, but that's something that like this newer generation coming up doesn't remember or know, and has never experienced, is being in a room with 3 other guys and a controller playing Halo, and just sniping each other from the other side of the map. Like these kids now don't even know what that's like.
You're looking at the screen, man.
Yeah, split screen versus.
Yes, I was. I was looking at your screen. Why would I?
Everybody should look at everybody's screen and just be awesome.
Exactly. But no, the local multiplayer, that's just split screen. That doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But that was some of my best memories, man. That was great nights.
My best.
Glory days, glory days.
Well, to touch what you were saying on the rise of tabletop games, is Dungeons and Dragons has made a massive comeback. I mean, it was gone for a long time.
Coming out now.
Oh my god! And a lot of what Warhammer took a lot of that, because Dungeons and Dragons was the original. You get your miniature to represent your character, and the dungeon master lays out a map, and if you want, you can build terrain. If you don't want to, that's fine. Sometimes the maps that the dungeon masters laid out were like paper maps, whatever. But you had figures that represented you, and all these tabletop gaming stuff where you collect the hobby itself, right? The actual hobby of collecting the miniatures, priming them, painting them, the tedious stuff too, like you use the X-Acto knives to scrape the moldings off, to scrape. I mean,
he's like
all the
you use your
together.
spit and a Q-tip and you pray. You get
a
microscope and a laser and you articulate.
A homunculi.
But I mean,
he's making golems.
Man, I just want to see what I want more than anything with Warhammer is some guy who's like an expert at it to just show up at a tourney with like just the gray, like bland ass ones and win.
Never painted.
Yeah, nothing. It's just the basic ones.
And see, like, I
he's in a business suit.
I think a lot of the D&D resurgence, and I know, Dan, I know you don't like the show, but I think a lot of it's due to Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I think that's really, it's brought it back into the cultural awareness.
I like season 1, and that was it.
Stranger Things hit with the pandemic. They all kind of came in together.
Yeah, exactly. It also revitalized Metallica, whether that's a good thing or not.
No, they haven't been vitalized since the Black Album or something like that.
Justice for all, man.
What makes me so mad about Stranger Things is the little hipster douchey part of me, or maybe the big hipster douchey part of me, that it like brings my favorite things to life. Because a few years ago, like 4 years ago, I made a post on like an old account about like of Kate Bush's Hounds of Love. And I was like, Taylor Swift wishes, like this is what she could make. And like no one knew what it was. And then out of nowhere, Stranger Things puts out Kate Bush, and good for Kate Bush. I mean, she deserves all the attention and love. She's the single probably greatest female recording artist ever.
Dude, she's making so much money right now.
It just ruined. I mean, you just hate when you see like, oh, some douche on TikTok likes the thing I like, and it shouldn't hurt you, but it does.
It never bothered me. Like, I get why it bothers people. It doesn't really bother me. Like, I want people to get involved in my fandoms. As long as they don't ruin them, I'm okay
in your
with
pants.
Exactly.
Is that what you said?
Well, I enjoy Stranger Things, and I enjoy
in his butt.
Yeah, exactly. No, I enjoy a lot of that stuff. It's the nerd culture is funny in that it can. I want people to be a fan of the things I like, so that my stuff can gain steam and people can see it, and I can enjoy it more because more people are enjoying it. That means I can enjoy it more because the people who are making it are willing to invest more into it.
Mm-hmm.
But then again,
it's got to stay pure.
Well, I call it pop culture. Well, pop nerd culture, right? I just kind of interject the nerd there, and
you interject nerds into lots of stuff.
Yeah,
like lockers.
I do. If I could, but and I think that's what it is, because you can be a fan of something, and you can be a fan of something and be cool about it, and then you can be a fan of something and be obnoxious, and that's why I don't like Harry
gatekeepers.
There are two reasons why I hate Harry Potter.
Gatekeepers, though.
Yeah, just not rude ones.
Yeah,
right. You see, it's kind of why I don't like Harry Potter. Is the whole reason why a lot of people don't like a lot of different things. It's not because I don't like things that are popular. It's because I think the character Harry, who's the main character, was written horribly, and B, the fandom around it is so freaking annoying that
I'll give you that. Yeah.
But I went to Harry Potter World, right, at Universal, and I had a blast, man.
I drank butterbeer.
Yeah, it was cool, man. I was on the rides. I was like, man, this is awesome.
You're
and then I realized
Harry.
everything. Huh?
You're a wizard, Harry.
Yeah, and then I realized everything about Harry Potter is cool except for Harry and the fans. Harry and everything else is cool. So then I just decided to hate the whole thing altogether. Why not? Lump it all up together. Yeah. But back to Warhammer, it's the two mediums where they are great at fantasy, since it hasn't been on the tabletop, is wonderful on the video game. I think the absolute best Warhammer video game out there is the Total War series. If y'all know the Rome Total War, or medieval, was it Kings or Knights, whatever, Total War. The Total War engine is basically what it is. Picked up Warhammer and is on number 3 now, and everyone is better than the previous. And
Chaos Bane was good too. I don't know if you played any of that, but Chaos Bane was pretty good too.
Yeah, Chaos Bane was good, and then and now that's not to say 40K doesn't have good video game titles. The Space Marine that came out on the Xbox 360 and the PS4. Yeah, it was really good.
Josh just realized it was Dave Matthews.
Yeah.
Dude with dreadlocks comes out my closet playing the violin to fill him.
You're the only dude coming out of your closet.
True.
Well, but they on the video game side, 40K has promising titles too. After Space Marine, they have Space Marine 2 releasing at the end of, either at the end of this year, beginning of next year. They got Dark Tide that just came out on Steam and will be available for X1S and PS5. Maybe no, that's not for PlayStation. I think it's going to be a Microsoft exclusive, so it's going to be X1X and PC. And
Space Hulk as well.
Space Hulk, yeah. So they have good titles too, but really, if you want to go to the tabletop side of things, you want to play, you know, most people go 40K.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the lore is what grabs me, what grabbed me as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the hobby. The actual doings of it, which I explained earlier, are fun, tedious, and you're not ever going to play with anyone if you don't have a working army. So working army meaning fully assembled and painted. A lot of people don't do proxies, right? The game relies on physical models to be there. So if you don't have the model, you don't have the piece. Like, you don't have the character.
It's much better that grabbed you as a kid instead of your uncle.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
I mean, you can have both.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's a wonderful series, and I'm really excited that it's becoming even more mainstream through the likes of someone like Henry Cavill, who
right. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, he's
I like anything that comes from Henry Cavill.
Yeah, anything. So he's you know, he's a huge Warhammer fan, and he's not shy about it. He goes on all the late night shows and talks about it. He just gushes and gushes over how much he loves it. And he talks about his army. He's at right now, I think he's currently using a Custodes army. That was the latest late night interview, he said. And if we want later on, we can get into all the races and factions, and then you'd know what a Custodes is. But that's what he's doing.
Let's get Hans judging all the races.
Well, but he's also now that DC has kicked him out as Superman, and he's not on The Witcher anymore after the next season. He's heading up a Warhammer 40K movie now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, so it's actually it's going to be a movie and a series, and it's through Amazon Prime. And
it'll suck, man.
Well, he's going to be writing. He's going to be part of the writing team because he wants it to stay true to the original content.
That's what's so funny is they all keep complaining, and the only complaints about him are like, oh, he was really passionate about it.
Yeah. To do it right. He wasn't taking over, man.
They kept saying he was using gamer language. Like what? Like what? Give me some gamer language. Like,
well,
he tried to teabag me.
He grabbed him and said, "Game over." Like,
yeah, right.
Game over, man. Game over.
Well, he's going to be writing, he's going to be producing, and he's going to be starring. So he's going to be in every single facet to make sure, you know, that's the whole reason he left The Witcher, because The Witcher was a passion of his. He played it, he grinded out that game. Mm-hmm. He loved that whole series, and he loved the books. He did all that. And then the directors are like, well, we're going to go this way. And, you know, he left because he's like, you know, you guys are being faithful, and I want to go somewhere where it is. Well, Prime has given him the chance to do what he wants to do. And I think that he would do a good job.
He's gonna use actual orcs, like, and chaos and slaves and demons. It's gotta be real.
Florida.
What's that?
They're gonna all come from Florida.
Well, I hope that he does not do Space Marines in any capacity.
You know he's going to, man.
You can't do Warhammer without it.
Yeah,
you can, but he's not going to. There's no way.
Dude, you want to see him as one. Like, come on.
No. Okay, so here's the problem with Space Marines. As much as they are kind of like this, if you're playing the game and if you play the tabletop game, the Space Marines are the easiest ones to play. That's why so many people play them.
I thought that was your mother.
Yeah, right. No, because they're the
lower class.
They're the easiest to win with, and because they're the easiest to win with, the rules are the most forward. Right? They have the least amount of complication in rules. They're the most straightforward, and if you're a beginner, people beginning in new games don't want to just go in there and just get their ass handed to them. So, it's easy. It's an easy win. Easy race.
You've never played hand the ass?
Yeah. So that's why so many people gravitate to the Space Marines, because it's the first thing they play. But if you're looking in the lore-wise and you're wanting to discuss the world of Space Marine, you're getting out of the game and you're getting into like the
that's fair.
Stuff. Space Marines are really hard because then you have to do the Horus Heresy. And if you do the Horus Heresy, you're not even in the year 40,000. You have to go back to 30,000. And then
and it's also like, for people, the uninitiated to the world and the lore and all, the other problem I think with Space Marines for like letting them carry a franchise is that they're much more one-dimensional characters. They're very much, this is my belief. I love the God Emperor. He is like, and everything is chaos. Everything's bad. I'm gonna kill, and like there's not a lot of depth in character. They just do what. They're on a righteous mission, and that's all they see.
You just described Twitter.
That's not the most... I did. But they're not the most interesting characters, per se.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely fair. I would much rather see something come from the point of view of, like, the Inquisition. The Inquisitors would be really a dope way to do it, or the Commissars. Something like that would be a lot more interesting.
Because I know nothing about Warhammer except for like what I see like fat bearded guys in England post and Hans.
But I'm a fat bearded guy.
There are books, right? Couldn't he just adapt like a book or something?
Right.
Easily.
The things about their books are very they're very stretched. Different authors kind of stretch the lore apart. The problem, though, with Warhammer is that it's inconsistent in its lore because they have so many authors. So their publication is called the Black Library. That's their publication. And there are just so many different novels over the decades.
It sounds like it sounds like a Jay-Z album.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And it's so extensive and crazy that it's too inconsistent. So most recently they've taken the rights. Games Workshop has reached out because they know that they're starting to gain steam and they know that they need consistency in their backstories and in their lore. Most recently they have gotten a hold of the various authors like Dan Abnett, who's probably the most popular author for Warhammer.
And the best. He's fantastic.
Yeah, and a few others. And they've gotten these guys together and they've said, look, we got to keep one consistent story. And they're starting to match up the novels that are now being produced to the newest edition for the tabletop game. So that way, because a lot of times the tabletop didn't line up with the novels, and then they had comics and they had multimedia. None of it all lined up. And it was all just this hodgepodge of confusion, which is probably why it never took off. So
yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
not the prices. That's why.
Well, to be fair, the prices. I mean, this is Games Workshop's out of England, and for the longest time, everything was imported. If you ordered brand new GW and you didn't have a Games Workshop physical site, you were ordering from overseas and having it shipped. that's a lot of the reason why the prices were so high. But
you can get a child and a bride for cheaper.
yeah, and it's also
That's Asia.
It's to do the tabletop game is very time consuming, and it involves you having a lot of open space because these armies take up a lot of room. So you have to have space, time, and money, and not everybody has all three of those, let alone even one of them.
The three laws of the universe.
Yeah, right.
I will say this: that I'm attracted to the world of Warhammer stuff more from the aesthetic and storytelling
a
side.
globosexual, are you?
I am, but I've read a bunch of the books. I have a ton of the omnibuses of the books. Like I've read most of the Dan Abnett stuff. I've read like the Ravenor series, the Eisenhorn series. I've read most of the Gaunt's Ghosts series.
Gaunt's Ghosts.
I've got both volumes of the Space Wolves. I've got the Ultramarine. So I've read a bunch of the Warhammer 40K novels. A lot of the Horus Heresy novels as well. So I really love the storytelling. I love the world building. From the tabletop side of things, I'm more interested in the aesthetics of it. I love watching like videos of people who make terrain. I love seeing how they build a ruined city and all those pieces, and it's just really cool to me to watch, watch that world in miniature form come to life. And if I had money and space and time, I would do it.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. That's the obstacle for me and for most people, I'm sure, is that sounds like a lot of fun. When and with what money?
Yeah. Well, so that's why I think it's so important that Warhammer is able to branch into video games and branch into an Amazon Prime series. And back to the characters that should be featured, what I think Henry Cavill would be perfect for, and it is, and you mentioned the books, it is these are two characters, and these two characters are probably the most dynamic human characters you can have, which has the largest breadth of story to tell, which would introduce the most races and the most drama that would keep it in depth. Because like you said, Space Marines are so one-dimensional, you would only be appealing to one crowd, and I think Space Marines would make something flop. Absolutely. Because to the uninitiated, they're like, I don't know and I don't care. But
they tried. They did the animated CGI movies, and they were fun to watch, I guess, but they definitely didn't take off.
Yeah, if you knew what you were looking at, they were great. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you didn't know what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
So the two characters I think that Cavill would be great in, he could do either Eisenhorn, or even better than that, he could do Caiaphas Cain.
I love Caiaphas Cain. I've got both of those omnibuses as well. The only problem with Caiaphas is that, all right, so Caiaphas Cain is an interesting character. He's a military leader, sort of like general type character. He's also he's a hero of the Imperium. Everybody loves him. He's an absolute coward.
He's an accidental general. He's not even a general on purpose. He's an
he is a bumbling, very, very lucky, very self-centered, cowardly person who somehow always manages to win. It's a very humorous series that's actually legitimately funny, not try hard funny. But don't know how well that would be for the first step into the world, because it could come across too silly. I do think Eisenhorn would be a fantastic entry. That was my gateway in, was the Eisenhorn books, and then I follow that up with the Ravenor books, which are my favorite books and characters in the whole world of that universe. But yeah, Eisenhorn could be a really good, if it was done right, it could rival any of, definitely it's better than anything Star Wars is doing right now.
Well, Eisenhorn, he encounters everybody. He encounters orcs, he encounters chaos, he encounters Dark Eldar. The only reason I would think that maybe I would go with Cain over Eisenhorn, because they're both very easy to get into, and they're both super, super good on the introductory level, is if you get too heavy on the sci-fi, for people who aren't initiated into sci-fi, you're going to need some kind of comic relief like what Cain would bring. or some kind of dynamic. I think he's a little bit more dynamic of a character than Eisenhorn is. At least that's how I've read him. And
well, the good thing about Eisenhorn,
he sleeps around with everybody, right? He sleeps with a Tau. He sleeps with a Sister of Battle. I mean, he sleeps with aliens, and he just gets around. He even slept with a Slaneshi demon. Like
he's Captain Kirk. We've already had that.
he is. Yeah, but people relate to Captain Kirk, right? Captain Kirk is. Yeah, I mean, as a character, he's an appealing character, right? He's an almost.
Yeah, but he's brave, and Kane is not. I think what makes
let them die.
I think Eisenhorn could work well though, because you are right. He's not as approachable a character, but Cavill plays stoic pretty well. The thing that's really fun about Eisenhorn is the team of characters that surround him too.
Yeah, he has
a really cool team, and I think that you could really let those people shine, and then let his nobility be what makes him, the heart of the story. I don't know what Cavill's planning to do, but he could definitely do a whole lot worse than starting with Eisenhorn. That would be a really strong entryway into really exposing people to something that otherwise they would not.
What other
give any attention
kind of
to.
cool swashbuckling sci-fi is there right now? Like Star Wars is dead. Like,
yeah. And well, here's the thing about Warhammer that you have to be careful. Even if they did do Eisenhorn's team, you got to have some comic relief or some lightheartedness in there. They call it the Grim Dark, right? The Grim Darkness of the Far Future, and they call it the Grim Dark for short. That's the slang for it, and it's incredibly depressing.
It's become its own genre now. Because I mean, that's now what they call like Game of Thrones. Anything like that, any sci-fi or fantasy that's dour and depressing and everybody dies kind of stuff is grimdark now.
Right, and it's just right, and Warhammer is to the point, especially 40K. I mean, the opening title is so easy to remember. It's in the grim darkness of the far future. There is only war.
In the time of chimpanzees, I was a monkey.
Right. I mean, it flows. It flows because it's true. Sorry, my light keeps going off. It's
grim dark.
Yeah. But it's a pretty depressing series, and you gotta have something to lighten the mood a little bit. But I think Eisenhorn would be great. I do remember Henry Cavill saying the hardest part about doing this whole series is getting a character, is picking a character, because once he picks a character, he has to be that character like forever. Does that make sense? Like and that was his big thing, is he's like, the thing about Warhammer is you can do anything with Warhammer that you want, because the whole premise is that there's war across the entire universe. 1 billion wars are fought in 1 billion different planets, and all these storylines, and every single one of these is equal threat enough to destroy humanity as the next. So not one more is a bigger threat than the other, and it's all happening simultaneously. Well, that's great and all until you start using main characters from series that are already embedded in the lore. And then once you start picking up those main characters, then you're kind of stuck with them. And that's what Henry Cavill's whole ordeal was. He said, I could make up a guy and be on a random planet with a random Imperial Guard unit or a random Space Marine unit and fight a random war, but it's not going to introduce you to the world. It's not going to do what these already established characters are going to do. Only problem is, he's saying if I play these established characters, if I play one, I'm stuck with that one because there's not other people that he could do it. You know what I'm saying? He just can't shoehorn himself into another role. Once he's a role, he's a role.
He can't just eyes and shoehorn himself into something.
It seems with that then that maybe the best option would be to kind of synthesize a lot of the stories and just plan like a 1-season event to see if it would, like, beginning, middle, and end, and then leave it, because it's part of a universe, so you could leave it open. But if you want to try to succeed, like, present people with something a little bit smaller, and then branch it out.
Well, and that's the thing.
Or take it where instead of making the characters necessarily the plot or the focus of the plot, you could do
Make the
something a
world the
lot more
plot.
like, yeah, make it something more like, y'all remember like Band of Brothers or the Pacific that were about World War II? Do something like make it about like let the conflict itself, whichever campaign they want it to be based around, let that conflict be the focus and give us a bunch of different characters, to see the different sides of it.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to star even in it. I mean, he could play for like
Mm-mm.
one season, play somebody that dies or something, and if it's a success, he can just direct and write and get other people to come in and shift the focus.
Or
Mm-hmm.
he could do what stories like or what American Horror Stories
Mm-hmm.
or shows like that.
Kind of an anthology.
Yeah, every season is a different series focusing on different characters, and then he can just play a different character within, and you just use the same group of actors, different seasons, different characters. So I mean, you can always do that too. And that's why Games Workshop, because it's picking up steam and they want to be able to promote themselves better. That's why they're doing all this. Why they're telling their authors, okay, look, we got to come to one mind and create one central story. We can't be having all this out here, all this extra stuff out here. And we're going to do the same with the game. So that way, now when people play the game, they can maybe follow the story. Now we can have a Prime show. Now we can tie it into our video games. And they're starting to, like, especially like with the Space Marine game, it was so successful with the main character that you play. They went on ahead and made a model for him that did not prior exist. Or the Dawn of War games introduced a new Space Marine chapter, the Blood Ravens, did not actually exist on the tabletop game, but the Dawn of War PC series was so fantastic and did so well that they said, "Screw it, we have a Blood Ravens faction now. We'll play. You can play them on the tabletop." And they made tabletop models for them and made an entire backstory and lore for them. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to just get consistency, because that's Warhammer's problem, is they're just too far out, right? They're just too spread out wide. They got to pull everything
Out,
back.
man.
Yeah, they got to pull everything back in.
So who gets the Warhammer?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Warhammer.
The nail.
Yeah. What the name Warhammer derives from the Warhammer Fantasy, which is where it came from, which was the hammer of Sigmar, his Warhammer, and he was like on the fantasy side of things. He's their god, the deity of humans, and he wielded a mighty Warhammer, and his name was Sigmar. That's where that comes from. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to do a quick rundown of the different factions really fast? I mean, I don't know if it's too much.
Can't fit all of it in there, but yeah.
Yeah.
So hit some of the big
hours.
ones.
Yeah, go ahead and start and save orcs. I'm gonna go grab something to eat. I'll be right back.
Orcs are my favorite, so I'll save them for last. So I don't know. Kick us off, Josh. You're a huge Space Marine guy. You like the Space Wolves, right? And that's your jam.
Yeah, Space Wolves. Yeah, I love the Space Wolves, and yeah, the Space Wolves are, if you could kind of, they start off on this planet, I think, that's very like tribal and almost like Viking era, conflicts among each other, not even knowing that there is anything beyond their planet. This, it's this very backwards thing, but they use that home world as I guess a breeding ground or as a source to refill their ranks. So every few years or however many generations, the Space Wolves come back, these Space Marines come back, and they claim some of the more powerful young men that have established themselves as warriors. And then, they begin that process of indoctrinating them and, the physical training, the physical alterations, kind of like, the idea of the Spartans in Halo. And then gradually they become the Space Wolves, and they get a sense of this, of legacy. But they also, the process that the Space Wolves go through, it gives them heightened senses and heightened aggressive tendencies. They become very animalistic. They become very actual wolf human hybrid type people. It's like having an entire army of, or at least an entire like battalion of super soldier or armored super soldiers, and they're all Wolverine and Sabretooth. So like, and they're really hot tempered, really like berserker rage type of personalities. But like the series of the books follow a guy named Ragnar who rises in the ranks and becomes one of their greatest leaders of the Space Wolves. So you get that sense of legacy. You get that sense of, I guess the a more primal approach to it. So they have a little bit more personality than like the Ultramarines, some of the others that are just like, let's kill the heretics. The Space Wolves are much more individualized. They have a lot more individual personality, and I think that's why I enjoyed the stories so much. And visually, they just look cool because they have the armor like you would think of a Space Marine, but then they also have all the teeth and bone and furs and things like that added to the armor that give them that primal look. So like I'm really into the Space Wolves. They're just really cool as characters and as a concept to me.
Yeah, and the Space Wolves, and to give kind of people an idea of what we're talking about when we're saying Space Wolves and Space Marines, what does it all mean? So I guess start with like humanity in general. So humanity was at one time governed by a man of super psychic ability, the Emperor, the God Emperor. He was the most powerful psychic.
Al Gore?
Man Bear Pig.
He was the most powerful psychic in the entire universe.
He's super serial.
And and he created he wanted to do this great crusade. He brought the humanity out of the dark age of technology. Let's see, it's kind of hard where you start. I'll start at the beginning and I'll just hit some points. And then
beginning, man destroyed the earth.
Right. Just to save time, I'll just hit general points. So humanity as we know it progresses with technology to be the most advanced species in the universe other than the Eldar, which are already established. And prior to humanity being able to do this, there's this great war. And of this great war happens, there's the old ones who are the old gods. And they fight what was now the Necrons. They fight the original race of those guys, the Necrontyr. And they trick the Necrontyr into selling their souls, or they don't, not the old ones, but the old ones side with gods who hate the old ones, and they trick them into selling their souls to encase them in metal bodies. And so they're like living Terminators. So the old ones create the Eldar and the Orcs, or at that time they're called the Quarks. And the Eldar and the Quarks go together. They defeat the Necrons. Necrons go to sleep for eon. And the old ones are unfortunately destroyed in the process, despite the Eldar and the Quarks winning. And so then the universe is just covered in Quarks and Eldar and humans, what comes of humans. Okay, so humans then progress through the dark. They progress through this age, the golden age of technology, where they are the most advanced race other than the Eldar, because the Quarks have degenerated into orcs. And AI, they have a war with AI, like a Terminator kind of a war with AI. And their war with AI causes them to be, the human race almost to be decimated. And all they're left with is nothing practically. And they call it the dark age of technology because most of the technology that was accomplished in the golden age is forgotten. Here comes the Emperor, the most powerful psychic in the universe. Nobody knows where he came from, who he was. They just know that he is the most powerful being ever among all races. And he takes humanity out of this dark age, creates these sons. He calls them Primarchs. And these Primarchs rule over these Space Marine chapters. And he spreads them out across the universe, and he calls it the Great Crusade. And what Josh was explaining was the Space Wolves are one of these chapters of Space Marines. And their goal is, during the golden age of humanity had spread across the galaxy so far and wide that a lot of the human race was lost to space and time. So the goal of this great crusade was to bring all these human colonies that have been lost back together as one. So there's your general story of Warhammer 40,000. And in the process, they encounter different races and of aliens, and you have the Horus Heresy, where it's a Primarch of the Emperor. His favorite son betrays him. It's a very like God and Lucifer situation where his
biblical story.
favorite, biblical story. His son betrays him, takes a third of the Space Marine legions, turns them to the Chaos Gods. During all this process, maybe it might be a little bit before, the Eldar.
Was he corrupted, or he just did it for the heck of it, like a dick?
He believes that Horus?
Yeah.
Horus betrayed the Emperor because he thought that the Emperor was wrong. He thought the Emperor was a false prophet, was a false god. And what it was it was Chaos putting things in his head.
Yeah.
And corrupting his mind. And so then basically that's kind of what happens. And the Eldar create the fourth Chaos God through decadence. The Eldar race had become so powerful and so strong in all this that they had created the god of decadence through their own decadence, which wiped out
decade of decadence.
Which wiped out, I think the novels and all that say about 90% of the Eldar race were wiped out. Some of them became Dark Eldar, where they indulged in the disgusting butchery and slavery and decadence, where they indulged in it to
Hollywood.
feed the dark. Yeah, to feed the dark god.
And the Eldar, for those that are kind of like, whoa, what's that? I know, like, there's Eldar. That word is used in other franchises and maybe mean different thing. Think of them like space elves.
Elves, yeah, space elves, dark elves and space elves, Eldar and Dark Eldar. And so basically, that's kind of what happens during all this time. And then we're getting to where we're talking about the different factions, the factions that we love. And Josh loves the Space Wolves of the Space Marines. I love the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard is your average army. They're your average man.
The Bruce Springsteen of Warhammer.
Yeah. To be a member of the Imperial Guard it's pretty depressing. An Imperial Guardsman usually does not last more than, I want to say, if an Imperial Guardsman is on the battlefield, his life expectancy is 26 hours, or something along those lines. So just over a day.
It's just it's infantry, but they're fireflies.
Yeah. And they have in their main armament or weapons are las guns, and you would think, okay, well, laser guns, but they joke around and they call them flashlights because that's about how much damage they do to really opposing forces. A las gun on a normal human would kill them instantaneously, but a las gun on like a Space Marine or an Orc, or especially Chaos, would just, and Chaos is hell, by the way. When I'm referring to Chaos, those are the forces of hell.
And so to play off of that too, there is interplanetary, obviously, travel, and there's stellar travel. They travel through warp. They travel through the warp. But warp is basically kind of infected with demons. It's like having.
Remember how Nightcrawler,
again,
when
Hollywood.
He'd teleport? Do what?
I said again, Hollywood.
Yeah, well, think of it as like Nightcrawler. Remember whenever Nightcrawler teleports,
he appears.
Yeah, he bamped. It seemed instantaneously, and then he got slowed down. And when he got slowed down, he ended up going through like another realm of like a hell.
Yeah, it turns out he just traveled really quickly through another dimension.
Right, and it was
like there'd be like brimstone when he got on the other end of it.
Right. So this is what the warp is. The warp is what Nightcrawler does. So, Yeah.
And those demonic forces of chaos and hell, they start breaching over into our world because there are cultists in our world on different planets who worship these things and sacrifice to them and open doorways to them and bring them into the world. So the Marines
CERN.
or
CERN.
Exactly. So like basically the Marines will get called in. This planet over here is infested with chaos and all these cultists and stuff, and it's like every planet that they start up on turns into
an infection
sequel to Dead Space, like it's Hell on Earth. It's Event Horizon when they watch the tape, like it's all this wicked crap. And when that's the fun thing about it is like when you look at the Marines, you say, oh well, they're just so like gung ho. Everything else they're all heretics. Kill all the heretics. That kind of thing. In this world, they're right. Like it is one dimensional, but they're right because this chaos stuff is really really bad. It's awful stuff, and they're right to stand against it. They are righteous to stand against it, and avoid being corrupted by it themselves. Which is the most interesting stories are the ones where they are tempted to use the power of chaos or be swayed in that direction.
The dark side of the force.
Yes.
You can't use evil to destroy evil.
Fight evil. Yeah.
Right. And here's an interesting aspect. So humanity worships the emperor, but the emperor created an atheistic society in which he did not want to be worshipped as a god, and he made explicit to his Primarchs and the Space Marines. He made explicit instructions. I'm not a god. Don't worship me as a god. I'm just a very, very powerful human. Well, after him and Horus and himself, they killed each other in battle, and at the conclusion of the Horus heresy, and the emperor's body survived, but his soul was shattered. So they put him on a machine of advanced technology from the golden age of humanity, mixed with some Necron technology and some alien Eldar technology,
and that's how he got his new groove.
Yeah, his new groove being entombed in this giant golden throne, while his body decays.
That sounds like a Friday night after tacos for Josh.
And a thousand psychics every day must sacrifice their lives to keep his mind and his soul centered as one, because the only way humanity can travel through the warp is through using astro beacons. And these astro beacons are psychic signatures that the emperor has put out during his Great Crusade all around the galaxy. And if they don't have the emperor in one piece, his mind in one piece, then when humanity enters interstellar travel, they either end up in hell forever, or they get spat out 100 years in the past, or 200 years in the future, or they just disintegrate, whatever. Who knows what happens in their interstellar travel. So they have to keep the emperor alive, so they have to sacrifice 1,000 psychers every 1,000 psychic.
Are they at any point trying to breed a being as strong as the emperor to take his place?
No, because the technology that was lost has not been able to be recovered.
That's why we haven't been back to the moon.
So
right.
So the technology
that we didn't go to.
So it was technology that made him a psychic to begin with?
Well, no one knows where he came from.
Okay.
He has an origin story. He has his own origin story, but his origin story is even mystical in its own sense.
He lived alone. His mind was blank.
Those lyrics aren't far off. But the thing is, the gods of chaos are also these big psychic entities as well. And chaos is a coin flip, because there's a good side to chaos and a bad side to chaos, which is what makes it so enticing. It's kind of like,
we've all seen Two-Face.
Right, exactly. It's what the devil offers you and what you actually get. So, you have the four main chaos gods. Since we're talking about the main enemies to humanity, you have Tzeentch, who represents on the good side, he represents hope, and he represents science and progress and ingenuity. But then on the flip side, he is the god of secrets and of conniving and knife twisting and of planning and coercing. The bad stuff. Assassinations. That's his stuff.
Scheduling.
Then you have Nurgle. Nurgle is
punctuality.
Nurgle is the oldest god of them. Tzeentch is the most powerful. Nurgle is the oldest god of them. Nurgle is on the good side. He is life. He is birth. He is fertility. He is, they call him Papa Nurgle because he's portrayed as an old grandfather, an old man. And but on the flip side, he's death and disease and decay and slow destruction. Everything with Nurgle is slow up as fast.
That's an old Sanford and Son joke. Is they meet a Mexican guy and he says Buenos Dias, and Fred Sanford goes, "Bees and disease to you too."
Well, see, like the interesting thing about all of it is like it is derivative. Like a lot of it is derivative. Like, I mean, there's no way to say that it's not, but it's done up in such a fresh way and it's so metal that like it's hard not to get like, it's one of those things where it's not dumb. It's the way it's all written out, the way it's planned out, it's complex and it's really interesting. But like you can engage in it at a very deep level of lore, or you can engage in it like, this is metal, man, and really get a lot of fun out of it either way. Like, it's a really solid franchise. Yeah, it is definitely. You look at the Tyranids, which is like this hive mind race of bug aliens. Well, that's Starship Troopers.
No,
the Borg.
And I don't
the Borg, yeah.
I don't know if you knew this, Josh, but so y'all know StarCraft.
Yeah.
So yeah. Warhammer 40,000 was StarCraft was supposed to be Warhammer 40,000. So what happened? The Zerg are the Tyranids, the Terrans are the Space Marines, and then who was the other faction? Oh my gosh, I can't remember that third faction. The Zerg.
I never played StarCraft as much.
Oh man,
I thought it was really cool. I just didn't have it. None of my PCs were ever strong enough to handle it.
Too poor
back in the day.
You would break
it.
Yeah, I put it with just breaking it.
It was supposed to be the first ever Warhammer game, and Games Workshop would not sell the rights to Blizzard.
Sounds like they didn't live up to their name.
So Blizzard created StarCraft and just changed the names to all the races, but kept all the models the same. So when you play StarCraft, you look like you're playing Tyranids.
Yeah, they look a lot, and even the armor of the Marines looks just
They look the same because they are the same. They just didn't get licensing permission.
But in Aliens, weren't they also called Space Marines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this, a Space Marine is kind of a hard thing to. You can't copyright the idea of a Space Marine.
No. So, for people who are wondering, Space Marines, what's the difference between a Space Marine and a human? Well, I said Imperial Guard. Imperial Guard is your average Joe, right? It's your just normal human. A Space Marine is someone who gets a gene seed implanted at a very young age from their prime, and that gene seed allows their body to grow. So it's Space Marine. Yeah, to grow.
You have to see a downside.
Just ads all over their phones as kids. Be like, do you want to have a really? Get your gene seed.
Space Marines are these super soldiers who are so. They call them angels. The humanity calls them angels because they don't have any other way to describe them. But it's all science, really, and they're just these giant super soldiers who've been implanted with the DNA of their forefathers, and they grow like an
forefathers.
So yeah, they're the Primarchs and they're chapter leaders. They're gene seeds, and so they have
that didn't explain anything. You just said the same words.
Well, no,
Alex Jones pops. Alex Jones is the God Emperor. Oh, they're making the frogs gay.
I'm
They're trying to make our kids gay.
Funny. You just said the same things, but with more confidence.
They're the Primarch fathers and the gene seeds. They're in caves in the woods.
The way that
no clothes
is the DNA of the forefathers like a gene seed, right?
Okay.
It's so the Primarch is over the chapter, and the Primarch has his DNA, and they call it a gene seed. His genes are planted into a seed, which are injected.
Levi's.
They're people, and so. And that's how they're created. And a lot of them have like 2 hearts. They have an extra liver. They're incredibly hard to kill.
So are they basically the baseline that humans can be to fight the existential terrors that exist?
Yes, but they are considered the peak of humanity. Here's the key difference.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
so,
you have to at least get there to stand a chance.
Right. And here's the thing. When I made the differential, when I started talking about the emperor and his golden throne and how he led an atheistic society, the reason that's important is because the Space Marines all know, except for the Black Templar chapter is the only chapter that worships him as a god. All of the other chapters know that he's not a god. They see him as the pinnacle of what humanity can become. They don't see him as right. But exactly. But the Imperial Guard and the lesser humans and the normal people of the world who don't have access to the information, because Space Marines live thousands and thousands of years, and humans only live, you're lucky if you hit 30 in this Warhammer world without being at war. And if you're at war, you don't last a day or 2. So
it's like Somalia.
All they know, right? So yeah, so all they see these giant Space Marines as these angels. And how else can they describe it? These superhumans who are just coming in on their behalf and destroying all their enemies, and coming in the name of this God Emperor. And so, and you get factions like the Sisters of Battle,
some of those that kill orcs,
and all kinds of stuff like that. So, and then that's why you had the Chaos Gods. You had Khorne and Slanesh were the other ones, the god of war and blood, and the god of secrets, decadence, and desire. And all these forces come together and just have this all-out bloody war. And anyway,
where did these chaos gods come from? Did they always existed and they take new forms, or are they a new creation in this universe?
Chaos is based on emotions of. It got dark again. Chaos is based on emotions of sentient beings of the universe. So like that's why I was saying there's a flip side to each one, right? So, and I mentioned Khorne and Slanesh. Khorne is honor and honor bound, glory, chivalry. That side of that is blood, gore, blood for the blood god, skull for the skull throne. And then Slanesh is, it's relaxation, it's desire, but in a good way, versus desire in a pornographic tentacle monster way.
Please explain.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So was the God Emperor's intention then to make an atheistic society so that it wouldn't give these beings power if they were worshipped, or?
Right, exactly. And what happens is people will worship chaos without knowing. So you'll have a group of space wolves that come in that, Josh is a huge Space Wolves fans, and they will give into their anger, and they will go into a blood rage, and they will slaughter all their enemies, the cultists, the Chaos cultists or Chaos Space Marines, but they're still giving, Khorne what he wants. What does Khorne want? He wants skulls for his throne. Well, if he can't get it through his own guys, he'll just let the enemy do it for him, and either way, he's going to get skulls, whether it's his guys or their guys.
He's a freak on a leash.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just as long as it's all built on emotion, and it's all like centralized, and so
there's also sort of at least in the books and games, the way the powers of chaos get portrayed and the cultists get portrayed, there's a very Lovecraftian aesthetic to them. They're very eldritch, and I think that works well for what for what they exist as within the story. But yeah, you'll definitely feel you'll get Shadow of Innsmouth vibes when you get to a village that has a bunch of cultists in it. They're trying to raise up some Shoggoth looking thing that's gonna make them part of its throne.
Nice.
Right. And the thing about chaos, the thing about being a part of chaos is a lot of people worship chaos not realizing they're worshiping it, right? A lot of people fall into it not meaning to. Magnus, who is a chaos Primarch, right, over the Chaos Space Chaos Space Marines under Tzeentch. Magnus the Red he's over the Thousand Suns, I believe, and his whole thing was he just wanted knowledge, but he wanted too much knowledge, and he didn't know where to stop. And it wasn't that he was corrupting people with the knowledge; he wasn't using the knowledge for evil. He just wanted to gain infinite knowledge, and in gaining infinite knowledge, accidentally gave into the whims of chaos and became part of that. So, but I'm saying all that because that kind of leads to my favorite race, which is the orcs. And what's so cool about the orcs is they descend from the Quarks, which I talked about earlier. And the Quarks were these super fighting alien machines that just kicked ass and took names. But they survive off of war, and they have to have war with each other. And because the enemy of the old days was dead, they had nobody to fight. So they literally degenerated over eons because they were fighting each other. And instead of these awesome fighting machines, they became these stupid, lumbering giant creatures. And when you say orcs, you're thinking, well, Tolkien orcs or, Dungeons and Dragons orcs. No, these guys are massive. They're huge, bigger than a human. Most of them are about the size of Space Marines. They're 6 foot tall, 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall, giant hulks of muscle. They breed giant red cannibal like creatures called squigs that they ride into battle, and that will eat anything. They eat metal, whatever. And here's why orcs are so powerful. Anything they believe, if they have enough confidence, will come true. So
you just described a bunch of college kids.
except they actually are effective. Orcs are actually effective. So orcs believe in fighting. And the reason why orcs haven't taken over the universe is because when the fighting is done with the enemy, they fight each other. And that's why they've been degenerating. Well, the thing is, if an orc will put together a bunch of junk. Right? He wants to build a car. This is literally how it happens. Here's how orcs build their battle wagons. That's what they call them. It's basically their trucks with guns. They get all the pieces together of a bunch of random scrap that doesn't make any sense. And they put it all together. And it should not run. It cannot run. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, the wheels are on, but are they really on? Is there actually a motor in there? You don't even know. There might be a hood to the vehicle. There might not be. But here's two things. The orc had enough confidence to believe it could be a working vehicle that it suddenly becomes a working vehicle.
And then the audience at the TED Talk stands up and claps.
Yeah, because it's a hunk of junk that if you took control of it, it would not work. It'd probably just fall apart and not even go anywhere. But the orc that has so much confidence, so because of his psychic energy, his central focus energy, he believes that it will do it, and it does it. Here's another thing. He paints it red, and because an orc paints a vehicle red, it automatically goes faster, and it does. And they portray it in the tabletop game wonderfully. If you have an orc vehicle and you paint your orc vehicle red, it gets like everything is in inches there in the game.
Nice.
Through measure tape. So it gets a whole half its distance extra added on to its full distance it can travel.
That's all it takes to paint it red.
Yeah, if you paint it red, it becomes
Vince, get the red paint.
If you paint it red, it gets longer.
Yes.
So that's why dogs, man. My favorite thing about the orcs is they're hilarious, man. They're so freaking funny.
Yeah.
Like they do some of the most ridiculous crap, but they're so funny. Like I remember there was one. I think it was in one of the codexes or something. There's this one orc, like war boss or whatever, who loves his gun so much that he goes back in time to kill his past self so he can get a double of the gun that he likes so much.
Yeah.
Like they're hilarious.
And how they go back, how he would go back in time to do that is he would have like these orcs that could create, and I put that in quotations, technology that they would believe would take them back in time, and their confidence is so much so that they think that it would do that it does. And then he believes that he would survive killing his past self, because you kill my past self, I'm not going to be alive in the future. But he believes that killing his past self for these guns will allow him to live in the future, and so it does. And so they're so wild. And yeah, painting your vehicle makes you go faster. If you wear blue, you're quieter. And so an orc that wears blue is called a sneaky boy. And they'll have quotations, and the orc will say, "Shh, we're quiet now," because we're wearing blue.
So they're like that guy in high school that you went to high school with that somehow succeeds despite him being him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's doing way better than you are.
And so that's why, oh man. And so, for example, here's the main guy for the orcs is Gaz Kolthronka. He's the main guy and the war boss, and he creates a wah. And what a wah is because orcs are so degenerate in the way they talk, it's a war, right? AR, but they go wah, WAGH, but that's all they're saying is war. So he creates a wah, and a wah is a mass army of orcs that gather on an asteroid. Can asteroids fly? No, but they attach rockets to the end of it, and it becomes a spaceship that does interstellar flight. And they call it a rock. They call it a giant rock. And what he does, what Gaz Cole will do, is he will fly this giant rock into planets and cause a planet-ending event. He will come off of that rock, and he will destroy entire populations. And then he will get back on that rock, and then he'll steal technology from the people that he just destroyed, and somehow create a ship somehow, or what happened was one time he was almost going to be destroyed, and he needed to get on a rival orc's ship on the bridge, so he teleported, but he believed in himself that he would teleport to their, sorry about that.
Good for the orcs. Good for them.
He believed that he would teleport to their bridge, and he teleported through their bridge through a teleporter.
So the orcs play by Calvin Ball rules.
Yes, like it's just, and everything, they're like Gwar. Mm-hmm. Like the personality is Gwar, and like I love. That's one of the books where some of the Space Marines hijack an orc truck. And then, like, it has a throttle on it, but there's, like, this huge iron bar welded onto the throttle, so the only way to drive it is completely full throttle. You can't slow it down.
Yep, and, like, a lot of orcs, they call themselves rocket boys, and what they do is they slap a rocket on their back, and they fly into the enemy at full pace, and if they survive, then they'll get up and fight with axes in their hands, like all this advanced technology, and they take like
Ryoka.
They'll fight with.
But why did you go Macho Man? Like you just totally went Macho Man with that, Josh.
Well, here's the thing: the orcs are such a nuisance. People hate them because when an orc appears on your planet, you're going to be forever infested. Because orcs don't have a gender. They're not guys or girls. They're not males or females. They have no genitalia because they do, like, you can look at like autopsy orcs on like the lore pages and stuff.
So they are college kids.
Yeah. So they have nothing there. What it is they reproduce by spores, and the spores are spread through their dead bodies. and it seeps into the ground, and then they grow more orcs out of the ground. So if an orc appears on your world, and
potatoes. They're sentient potatoes.
and you get rid of that orc by any means other than incineration, and you allow that orc to bleed into the dirt at any point in time, then that orc will subsequently grow more orcs. And then, like 10 years' time, you have twice as many as you had when they originally came. And that's how they. So once they get somewhere, they're like
Irish.
Yeah,
What'd you say?
They're like the Irish.
So what people have to do a lot of times, Space Marines have to do is they have to do what's called an exterminatus. And exterminatus is exterminate, and basically they glass an entire planet to get rid of the orcs. To truly get rid of an orc infestation on a planet, you have to turn that whole planet to glass. You have to incinerate it, and that's the only way they can do that. But then you officially destroy a world that might have resources for you, might have things that you needed to support your war effort. You can no longer have, because either you're going to have to sit there and fight orcs while you access that resource, or glass the planet, turn the planet into a dead world where nothing can live and nothing can grow, and then nobody has resources.
We've all seen
Thanks
Detroit.
Yeah. So that's why I love them. And they talk with like this old English accent. Was like this like
Cockney.
Yeah, like that. They'll say we's the biggest and the fastest there is, because they believe bigger, faster, stronger, louder when they shoot their guns, they yell DACA, and because they yell DACA, they think that it makes their guns go faster. It's like faster. Yeah, and it does. And then the war boss will say, "Hey boys, we need more DACA over there," and he'll point, and then they'll turn around and they'll say, "Yes, boss," and they'll yell DACA while they shoot their guns, and their guns, because they believe in it so, will fire their rounds faster. But none of it's accurate. They always miss their shots. It's hilarious. So they 9 times out of 10 they miss their target anyway. They just want the sound of it.
So are they considered chaos then, since they're empowering these gods so much?
No, so chaos doesn't. So certain chaos gods like them and don't like them. Khorne, who is over, blood, melee, and destruction and death and skulls, loves them because that's what they do. They make war everywhere they go. They live for that. That's their purpose of life. And it's not like you can convince them to do otherwise, because the Tau, who are a race in Warhammer, who had never encountered the orcs, their first encounter was they sent an emissary to try and negotiate with an orc to have peace. And the orc killed the Tau. They cut his head off and they smashed him. And they called him a blueberry. And they smashed him. And they're like, we don't get it. Why won't the orcs? Because the orcs don't. It's literally their genetics. They don't know how to be peaceful. You can't make them be peaceful. You don't know how to. They're just not.
They're the pit bulls of the universe.
Yeah, they just can't do it. And so, and it's not against them. I mean, they don't know that they can't do it. They just are what they are. They're just a force of nature, and that's why they're not chaos. They're considered more of like a force of nature. And other chaos gods hate them, like Nurgle hates them because they're so fast. They just come in and destroy everything and wreck everything. And Nurgle, is pestilence and decay, but he's a slow death and he's a slow life. Tzeentch doesn't like them because Tzeentch is about being conniving and being shifty and like an assassin. And orcs, unless you're a commando who wears blue, orcs don't really do that. He's like, what do I gain from these guys? So, but Slaanesh likes them, right? Because Slaanesh is about decadence and desire, and orcs love war. And because they put so much love and desire and pride is another thing of Slaanesh. They put so much pride in their ability that it empowers Slaanesh and makes them stronger. So, you have chaos is kind of hit or miss, but they will fight chaos. They fight everybody. What they often will do is they will join with humans and they will side with humans to fight a common enemy and then turn around and kill the humans.
Because they want her hat.
Right. It's because they have to have constantly war. And so people will be like, why the orcs just helped us kill chaos? Because the orcs will attack chaos. They call them spiky boys because they always have spikes on their armor. So like, you spiky boys. So they'll go and they'll attack the spiky boys. They'll attack chaos. And then And when they're done attacking Chaos, they'll turn around and attack the Empire and Imperium. And Imperium's like, well, what the heck, man? Why'd you just? He's like, well, they're dead, and now you're here, and we have to fight. That's in our genetics. So, because you're next, they'll turn around and fight them. So
if this is your first day as orc, you have to fight.
Yeah. And they worship a god. They worship two gods, Gork and Mork, and that's who they worship. And
Mindy.
And they always have half of the orcs believe in Gork, half of the orcs believe in Mork, and neither of them can agree which god is more powerful. So they'll have entire civil wars over that. Because they fight amongst themselves, and they can't. That's why they can't take over the universe, because it would be sad if the orcs could actually unify and be one mind and be coherent, then they would overtake the universe and nothing could stop them. But they can't. And so because they fight with themselves, once they're done fighting everybody, then they turn around and kill each other.
They're the Balkans.
That's my favorite, man. The orcs are just,
they're great.
Going on and on about them, but man, it's so hard not to gush over the orcs, man. Oh god, it's so hard not to gush over those guys.
But being an outsider, it seems, like I said, it seems like almost pretty easy that you could make at least like a season of this, especially if you just took.
There's so much there.
Yeah, you could keep it small. You could make it like just even centralize orcs as the main guy, like an infestation that is spreading, and then you could bring in the other races through that kind of stuff.
Well, that's why Eisenhorn is so cool, right? I mean, I know we went down a really deep rabbit hole that most people are probably going to fall asleep to, but the thing about why we emphasized Eisenhorn way earlier on is because Eisenhorn encounters all of these races at some point in time or another. He fights the Eldar, then he's allies with the Eldar because they have a common enemy in the Necron. Or he fights the orcs, or all these different various things, So,
then he fights the Cinnabon.
Yeah, Caiaphas can fight a lot of different races too, but he doesn't. He fights a lot of different people, a lot of different races and species and stuff like that. But he doesn't. He's not as extensive in his travels, I wouldn't think, as Eisenhorn is. I think Eisenhorn's gone farther and interacted more with the variety of the universe than Kane has. But Kane has done quite a bit himself. Kane whores around, man. He sleeps with aliens and demons, and he knows it too. Like, he knows these things are like, he knows he's sleeping with a demon. He knows he's sleeping with an alien. Like, he's like, yeah, I know I am. Who cares? He still shrugs his shoulder. He's hilarious,
he's
man.
Like Zeus.
Oh, God.
That's funny. He's very funny.
And everything is accidental. And he doesn't have a power, but I guess if you could say he had a power, it would be luck, because things just happen to be like he
also. I think my favorite
off as a commander, he acts in
Kane books. He's purposefully chosen his aide or his right hand man is like the most offensive smelling being on the face of the earth. Like, he's this horrible, stinky guy, and like he purposefully has him so other people will like leave him alone because they don't want to be around his helper.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing about Caiaphas Kane is he does have an end story, and his end story is he dies, presumably an old man. He's one of the few. And I mean, when I say few, I mean he probably is the only one in probably the last 1,000 years that has gotten to live out to his old age, into his 80s, and die peacefully, because everything.
Well, he wasn't vaccinated.
Yeah. So everything just happens to fall his way, and everything is super accidental, and that's just how he is. And his luck followed him all the way.
You realize you've spent 20 minutes describing Space Mr. Magoo.
but he not to be mistaken that he won't fight, because he will kick ass in a fight, right? I mean, he's a coward.
Mr. Magoo,
yes,
yeah,
right. He's a coward in a fight. He would rather step back and let other people handle it, and he's quick to blame other people. He's always shifting blame. He's never wanting to be real focused. And things, like I said, he just falls into really bad situations and then falls into really good luck after. And the thing about that, though, is despite all of that, if you get in a fight with him, he will beat your ass. And that is hilarious.
Yeah, he is actually a good fighter. He's got like his chain sword and all that stuff. I mean, he actually is pretty formidable. He just avoids it as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. He's more of like a Han Solo type, I would say, than a Mr. Magoo. Right? He avoids conflict, but if he has to fight, he'll whip your ass. You know, sometimes.
Does he get killed by his own son and thrown off of a railing?
Nope, he dies peacefully, an old man, because his luck actually goes with him to the end of end of his days.
Because Disney doesn't own him.
Yeah, exactly.
His cane pulls out.
But Eisenhorn is cool too, though, man. Eisenhorn is legendary, and yeah, I don't know, it's just wild.
So, would you say that you're excited for the show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm very, and I love Henry Cavill. Mm-hmm. So like, I can't imagine a version of it that I won't at least have stuff that I can appreciate in it. Like it'll probably never be like a perfect representation of any of it, but like I'm not as married to it having to be exactly like something as I am when it's
as the idea of it.
Yeah, it's just the concept. Like as long as it gets the tone and the aesthetic right for me, I don't care if it perfectly follows lore. I mean, it's not Tolkien. It's not like it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be watchable.
The big flaw is its inconsistencies, right? That's why I was saying, I kept repeating earlier on, was that its inconsistencies made it so that you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. The only things they would have to get right is if they're going to use specific characters that are already established, they need to present those characters true to form. And when you present the races, you have to present the races true to form and how people interact with them. I mean, you can't have the Eldar come in and have this love fest between humans and Eldar, because they don't. They hate each other. They fight each other. Eldar have been around for millennia. They think humans are young, naive. They think they're the reason the universe is the way it is anyway. And they just can't get rid of them fast enough. And but the only time the Eldar help, or the elves, so we'll say elves for people who need help with that, the only time they will help the humans is if they find a common enemy. If chaos presents itself, if the orcs present themselves, if the Tyranids, who are like the Zerg type, the alien from the movie Aliens type creature, presents themselves, then the Eldar will say, okay, we'll help you out for now, if it's in our best interest.
That awful Halo show set the bar so low. Like it's gonna, all it has to do is not be that bad.
Yeah,
man, really. I don't know anybody who watched that.
I watched one episode of it.
I watched it, and Master Chief, and the very last episode, Master Chief is making out with
Cortana,
a human hybrid Covenant chick, and they're falling in love.
Doesn't he die and Cortana takes over his body?
Well, here's the thing: Master Chief in the games never takes off his helmet. In the first damn episode, you see his face, and you're like, "What the hell, man? I'm not supposed to."
He hardly ever puts it back on. He stays helmetless the whole time.
The Mandalorian wasn't supposed to take it off either, but Pablo Pascal, whatever his name is, had to have that in his contract.
Yeah, but at least in that show, they punish him for it. He has consequences.
Yeah,
he gets Grogu back apparently, though.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I love The Mandalorian. I unabashedly love The Mandalorian.
I love the first 2 seasons. I hope the next one is good. I hope it.
The trailer, they just released a trailer for it, and it looks fantastic. Like, he has to go back to Mandalore.
I'm mad they got Grogu back, though, man. I really wish that would have just ended with Luke. We never see Luke or Grogu ever again. But maybe it'll be good. To watch.
Here's the thing: is if you watch Boba Fett, you just watch season 3 of Mandalorian. Now,
or at least the prequel to it.
The prequel. Because of what? Out of 10 episodes, at least a solid 6 of them were just The Mandalorian and nothing to do with Boba Fett, whatever. And they actually wrapped the entire Grogu story arc in Boba Fett. You're like, what the hell?
Well, going back to our main thing, Hans, do you think, as a fan of Warhammer, do you think that they actually can make a show that elevates it into maybe not mainstream success, but at least to iron out a lot of the lore issues and give people who aren't accustomed to it like a springboard, like to start with.
Absolutely. And I think that it can make mainstream in the nerd culture and nerd pop culture. Um,
It it,
which
it seems like it'd be really hard not to. Like if you just showed this guy with a chainsaw sword cutting through like an orc. I mean, it's gonna be the coolest thing ever. Like,
it's
that's what Warhammer. The best word for it is it's just cool. It's really cool. And as long as you make it that way, and don't make it about something stupid, if you let it be what it is, which hopefully with Cavill on board, that's exactly what he'll do. You can't really go wrong. It's going to find a fan base.
yeah.
I'll tell you what. When I play the tabletop game, and I said it was metal. I'm not the biggest fan of heavy metal, but I would always play Bodies by Drowning Pool, and that was the best song ever to play before you hit a tabletop game of Warhammer or you hit a video game of Warhammer, especially if you play as the orcs or as chaos. And it's just like, just to let the bodies hit the floor, because that's what you're doing. You are going in there and you are just slaughtering everybody. Nobody's going to live. You don't give a shit. That's how,
Did you see the Mad TV? I think it was version of that. It was like, I can only count to 4. I can only count to 4.
Yeah. What comes after 1, 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
So yeah, well you have. I mean, I have high hopes because of Cavill. I don't have high hopes because of Amazon, Netflix, or any big company. If it's got a name attached to it, it means it's gonna suck because that's just the world we live in. But if Cavill will go,
giving him creative control.
Yeah, if they
well, and you got to think, man, he's been through all that crap with Warner Brothers
and Disney.
And he's been through all that crap with Netflix. Like, I think he's probably learned. I think he's learned the lessons that he probably needed to learn from all of that.
That he's bigger than these people.
by a huge margin. I don't think he's gonna let that happen again. I really don't.
Yeah, and also Games Workshop is really, really stingy about letting out their rights. They don't just let their rights out to anybody.
That's true.
This was never on the table until Cavill attached himself to it.
All right, so you're saying you're not excited about the idea of a purple-haired, obese, gay orc as the main star?
Orcs don't even have genitalia? No.
How progressive.
How regressive.
Yeah.
How aggressive. Wog.
That's
yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I think that's a good place to stop it for tonight. But thanks for coming on, Hans. Yep. I want you to be like a staple here, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to have you talk about anything.
I'm into all kinds of stuff. I'm a nerd of all trades instead of a jack of all trades. I'm a nerd of all trades. I do. Let me see if I can get my light back on. We're signing out, so I'm gonna take my light off. But we're I'm sure y'all can still see me. I'm a nerd of all trades. I like I'm huge into wrestling. I'm into sports. I'm wearing a hockey track it and a football flat bill hat. So I mean, I
claims himself a nerd and then starts talking about sports.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. I can come at you with sports. I'm into professional wrestling. I do comic books. I do tabletop gaming. I do video games. I've been playing
midget porn.
Yeah, porn, whatever. I could do it.
He said I could do it.
He said I could do it. I can.
He's like, it's not that hard.
He needs a gene seed.
He's like, I have 2 kids. It's not hard.
Yeah, it's not hard. So what? But I can. I love being into everything. I'm not so much I know I went down a deep rabbit hole with Warhammer today.
That's why you're here.
Right. But honestly, I didn't even scratch the surface. I mean, if there was an iceberg, I didn't even get to the tip of the iceberg. I got to the mist that comes off the tip of the iceberg. You know,
Right.
it is. I'm telling you, man. I love doing this kind of a thing. I hope one day, if y'all do professional wrestling, man, hook me up. I'll go all day into that too.
It's fine with me, man. I just want
Yeah,
you. I just want the internet to know you exist.
yeah. Well, hey, you know what? I got a degree in communications, and I'm always willing to pimp myself out there for a job. I'm job hunting right now, so if you're watching this and you're saying, "Hey, I would like that guy to run my
In
media,"
my porno.
I like that fat bearded guy that's sitting in the dark to run my media accounts. Hook me up. I mean, that's what I do. I love communicating. I love streaming. I love podcasting. I love reporting. I've done journalism, and Dan, I've done journalism in the past stuff. Um, written newspaper articles and stuff. I've done these things, and I am in love with it. And so, yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you
Sweet,
guys are.
dude.
Yeah. So
Sounds good, man. Well, let me we'll end it there, and I'll holler at you guys later. So I'll say peace, and then I'll end the recording. See
keep an
ya.
eye out for you.